Hello, everyone, and welcome to the tavern. Final episode of Daredevil Born Again Season 1. And they're already recording Season 2, which means maybe next year I'll have to go through all this crap again. Ugh. You know what the worst part is? I liked this cosplay. I like it a lot. It allows me to just be visually impaired without really having to hide it or have people question about it. I can go around the con with my cane, usually guided by a friend. Heck, I was even trying to talk my brother into going as Foggy, or possibly find some of my other friends to go as other characters from the Daredevil series. It was going to be really kind of cool and fun, and I was hoping this series would, help invigorate people into wanting to join me as part of the Nelson and Murdoch crew. You understand that the thing with me in cosplay is I feel like cosplay is a tacit endorsement of a series. In other words, if you cosplay from something that is generally considered bad, let's say a garbage tier Marvel product, a game most people don't like, when you walk around dressed from it, unless you're doing it ironically, I guess, you're essentially saying, hey, I liked it. So if I go around like this at cons this year, people are going to go and say, oh, did you like Born Again? And I have to go, no, it was absolute trash. And I got to get into that conversation over and over again. And then randos will just look at me and go like, oh, I guess he was a fan of Born Again. And I'm like, I'm not. I friggin' hated it. Well, okay, I didn't hate all of it. And honestly, most of the time I was just bored. But you understand what I'm trying to say. It's kind of annoying having to go forward and wear this while having to deal with the fact that the TV show just came out and it was garbage. Let's get started with the review so I can get this over with. Well, we do get some story this episode, but the plot overall has been pretty terrible. So you can imagine just this episode being a lot of jumbled ideas, trying to make something of a finale. We began with a flashback to Vanessa, who is a criminal mastermind, of course, buying off Poindexter by getting him out of jail. This is followed by Matt being in the hospital and talking about how he needs to find Foggy's notes to figure out what Foggy learned that caused this hit to be put upon him. We also cut to Kingpin checking in with his wife to make sure she's okay. And then we cut to Kingpin yelling about how he wants all the vigilantes taken down and he wants the city 100% secure. We continue on with Kingpin sequences as he talks with Buck about eliminating Matt Murdock, and with that staff lady whose name I never remember, about gathering those people who are loyal to him and sending the rest on their way. After that, we have a nice little musical sequence as we see the corrupt cops kind of starting up their activities in the city. We then have Frank Castle showing up, teaming up with Matt Murdock. They both suit up and go and fight the corrupt cops who are there on the hit. We get one of the worst fight scenes in the entire series, as it is very dark and has a lot of flickering lights, which is great for those of us who get migraines. Thanks, dicks. Daredevil and the Punisher, of course, win, somehow in the dark, where I can't really see anything and there's a lot of flickering lights and it's shot terribly. And Matt tries to interrogate one of the corrupt cops. Frank just keeps shooting him, which kind of fun. And then there's a grenade drop. They both escape as the place blows up. And then Karen shows up and she's like, hey, need a lift? And they all go back to the Punisher's base to patch up and have a little conversation where Matt explains that Foggy had found some evidence and we need to figure out what evidence Foggy found. Then we go to see Buck and Daniel trying to shake down the city council to make sure they don't get in the way of Fisk's plan. And we also see BB Chanaru! Thank you! I get one last time of using this graphic. And it's essentially someone commenting on the rioting and the chaos in the streets after the power grid was shut down, because Kingpin needed some chaos in order to enforce his laws. We also see the cops just shooting random criminals. So yeah, we're seeing the brutality level kind of kick up with the corrupt cops on the New York police force. Matt and Karen discover that Foggy had learned that Red Hook is a free port. United States laws and New York City laws are not applicable in that area. And because Foggy figured that out, he had to be killed because that's where Vanessa did a bunch of her crime stuff, apparently. Sure, that makes sense. That's totally tracks. However, it does make sense as a location that Kingpin might want to use to make a new base. So, okay, that's a nice little plot thread for next season. We then see the corrupt cops close in on the Punisher while the Commissioner is brought to Red Hook to meet with the Kingpin. We then see a big fight at the Punisher's base as he fights a bunch of the cops, but eventually gets defeated. It's so great that it was kind of dark and hard to follow the action, so that made it really fun to figure out who was killing who, but at least you could see the Punisher's skull occasionally, so that did kind of help. Anyhow, we then get one of those cut back and forth sequences, which the guys making the show really love to do, though they never quite do them right, and they always come off a little awkward and bad. But this time around, we see Kingpin interrogating the Commissioner, while Frank Castle is being interrogated by the corrupt cops. Then we get a horrible CG head crushing. Cool. And the Punisher is just taken away because he won't join the corrupt cops. Matt Murdock shows up and is talked down by Karen, because he would just be throwing his life away if he charged into the Punisher's lair. Karen makes a comment about how you will need an army, and Matt says, I'll make an army. So, teammates, probably members from the Defenders, and dare I say it, he was told quite a bit about how awesome Ms. Marvel is. I'm calling it right now. Season 2 is going to have Ms. Marvel as the comedy relief member of the team. I'm just saying, they spent a lot of time in episode 5 or 6, whatever one it was, where we had Ms. Marvel's dad really hyping up Ms. Marvel. This is also Disney we're talking about, so dumb decisions is kind of the standard. Anyhow, after that, Kingpin goes up to Heather and offers her a position in his staff. She accepts. And then Kingpin does his declaration to the city about martial law and the new Safer Streets initiative. We end with Matt and Karen talking about, feelings and stuff. And then we cut to a Matt speech about how we need to fight against evil and things. We have a mid-credits little sequence where the Punisher breaks out of jail. So, Punisher's on the streets again. If none of that sounded exciting or interesting to you, just imagine sitting there for an hour and watching it all. We don't get any real good fight scenes. We don't get any kind of real plot. We don't even get an ending. We get I'm going to give a speech, someday we'll beat the Kingpin, I guess, to be continued. That's what we get. This could have worked fine as an earlier episode, where then we go through a couple episodes of Matt meeting up with former teammates and working together with them again, or building an underground network of people who want to take down the Kingpin. There's things you could have done. This is not an episode 9. This is most certainly not an end of a season. Oh god, the writing of this show is just terrible. Even though this is the fixed version, it's still god-awful. Either the writing just got worse over time, or my tolerance of the writing declined over time. And I'm not quite sure which one it is. And frankly, no one else cares about it either. It has horrible ratings, it can't trend, and no one's going to care about Season 2. Heck, I don't even know if I'm going to review Season 2. I don't even know if I want to finish reviewing Season 1. And I'm in the last episode. Anyhow, before I quit recording, I should probably move on to the characters. Not much to say about the characters that I haven't already said in previous episodes, so I'll make this quick. Matt Murdock is still very mopey, he does some Daredevil stuff, and has a big, inspiring speech at the end. There are some nice moments between him and the Punisher, and him and Karen, but I think that's down to the charisma of the actors, because the script isn't that great. However, Matt is better than he was in previous episodes, primarily because he's actually doing stuff. He took a bullet, didn't even have a night in the hospital before he had to go and fight a bunch of thugs, and was perfectly fine for the majority of the episode. Kinda stupid, but superhero, so I guess I let that slide. Then we have the Punisher, Frank Castle. He's the Punisher, Frank Castle. I don't know what else to say about him. He shoots the bad guys, and he gets in kind of a weird little semi-argument thing with Karen, and it's nice seeing him in at least more than one episode this season. And I'll give points, his dialogue and stuff feels very authentic to the character. He's probably gets off the best of any character in the series. Granted, he was only in 2 episodes. Then we have Karen! Yay, she's back for her second episode as well. She's about the same as usual. She's trying to be a guide, be a support, and be a friend to both Matt and Frank. And her investigative side at least gets to come through, as they try to figure out why Foggy was shot. Beyond that, she just kind of facilitates the story and is there for Matt to talk to as his confidant as she was in the past, which is nice to see that again. Would have been nice to see that for the majority of the season, though. Finally, we have Wilson Fisk. The Kingpin is acting like the Kingpin. Murders a dude with his bare hands, sets the city under his control by manipulating the city council, amongst others. He has his army of brutes. It would have been nice to have gotten this version of Kingpin for the entire season, instead of seeing him look like a dope in his marriage counseling, being talked down to by various people who just think he's an ineffectual weakling. It's really weird. It's like everyone forgot like what his background was, except for the times where they don't. He also tolerates the failures of Daniel way too much, but I guess Daniel is now being designed to be his future major domo, so cool, I guess. When it comes to the minor characters, not a lot I can say about them. We get a little moment of Vanessa being criminal mastermind, and then she's really not in the rest of the episode. Daniel's there, flexing as per usual. Commissioner's there to complain a bit and then get killed. Yeah, it's kind of it. Like, I don't know what else to say about them. They're really boring, bland, empty shells of characters like most everyone else in the show. The big problem for the characters is that the writing for them was massively inconsistent. Kingpin is written as both a ineffectual loser and as a psychopath, and in the end, it ruins his character. Matt is a mopey boy for the majority of the show, except for when he's not. He has a relationship that's incredibly rushed, just so we can have some drama near the end of the show. He never really fully feels like Matt Murdock in this series. And I don't know how to explain it. Though I am grateful that Cox got a lot of the mannerisms down later on in the show, like I predicted he would. While some of the other sequences that were the original footage clearly showed that he didn't have the mannerisms down, or the directors didn't care that he had the mannerisms down. So it is nice to kind of see that kind of stuff later on. Most other characters don't have anything much I could ever really say about them throughout this series. The minor characters are mostly characters I just disliked and don't care about, and characters that would have been really cool to see more of, like Karen and the Punisher, are barely in the show. Overall, the characters are just mishandled, and it really kind of hurts the show overall, because one of the things that made the Netflix show so great are the characters. All right, let's move on to aesthetics. All right, the aesthetics this episode are a mixed bag. I'll put $1 in the jar since I've said that so many times already. With the audio, I'm going to see it right now. The F-bombs and stuff just feel out of place, as I don't really recall any being used in the original Netflix show. And I think they're doing it here just to be like, see, we're dark and edgy. We'd add an F-bomb. I don't know. Just want to throw that out there. I'm not really minusing a point for that. I'm just pointing out that it always feels odd to me. In terms of our general audio, we have a nice little part where you hear like a saxophone playing Killing Me Softly, and then you actually have it transition into the actual song as you see the police starting to be more brutal. Then we have the end of the episode where we get a Radiohead song, everything in its right place. I get it now, see, because Matt's Daredevil again and Wilson is Kingpin again, something we could have just done at the very beginning of the show, but we took an entire show to do it for some reason. We're super clever. You're not clever. It was dumb and that song's annoying. Beyond that, there's very little else I can say about the audio. The background music is mostly forgettable, and the Foley sounds for the fights and stuff are fine. Just would have been nice if I could have seen what they were doing. Speaking of the visuals, the fights in this episode are terrible. They're low light without using ambient light to try to make things more visible. The flashing of the muzzles, of course, gave me a headache and started to trigger one of my migraines, though the quality of the show and the exhaustion I feel having gone through 9 episodes could also be responsible for that. And the second Punisher fight, still kind of a massive letdown as well, even though it's him versus a bunch of corrupt cops. You think that would have been a much more intense battle. The sad part is, I've seen action movies and TV shows that have done the night battles, where I understand what's going on, I know who's fighting who, and here it's just shot terribly, like all the fights throughout this entire series. These are directors that do not know how to do action sequences properly. There's too many cuts, there's too many changing of angles, they're trying to be artsy with it, and not understanding the dynamics and storytelling of a fight scene. And I'm not against a pitch black and you hear Daredevil like wrecking dudes, because that's a good Daredevil thing to do, but we have some of those low light sequences in the original series, and they come out so much better than this. Why? Because the director there knew how to do a fight scene properly. These ones do not whatsoever. And it's irritated me since the first episode, and it irritates me now. Beyond that, there is a little bit of interesting camera work here and there. It's much better than the old footage, as I've said before, but it's nothing so spectacular that it's noteworthy. It's just kind of there. Like I said, the aesthetics are a mixed bag. Some good things here, some bad things there. Always just kind of a push, which is unfortunate because the usage of sound, the usage of visuals, the usage of the city itself worked so well for the original series, and here it just works terribly. It's like someone understood the elements required for Daredevil, but not know how to actually put them together to make Daredevil. Let's wrap it up. I'm glad this is over. I really wanted this show to be good, and I gave it the benefit of the doubt in the beginning, to a point that I think I may have been a little too lenient on those first 2 or 3 episodes. But you know what? Sometimes that happens. Sometimes as a reviewer, you go and say, hey, I want this to be good, and I'm gonna put on my rose-colored glasses. And sorry, couldn't help myself. Being able to say things along the lines of, oh, this is building towards something. Okay, that's a cool choice. Things like that. Overlooking those little flaws early on, and as the show progressed, I overlooked them less and less and less. Probably because I became more jaded as the story continued. It's just not a good show. I'm glad not that many people watched it. I bet there's more people watching reviews of Daredevil Born Again than there are of people actually watching Daredevil Born Again. Now, who knows? Maybe season 2 will be great. But I doubt it. I think it's going to be more of this, and if it's more of this, I don't want to be part of it. Thus, my final verdict for episode 9 is a 1.5 out of 5. While there's some interesting plot revelations and some okay character moments, for the most part, this is not a good episode. It was not enjoyable, the visuals gave me a slight headache, and the audio most certainly had flaws, especially that stupid Radiohead song where it's like, oh, look how clever we are, everything's in its right place, right? Right? And to be honest, my Netflix score is significantly lower at a 0.5 out of 5. Because if this was the Netflix series, it would make me want the Netflix show to be canceled. And thankfully, season 2 will be the end of Daredevil Born Again. Now, when it comes to the full show, my final score is usually very different than my score per episode. For example, with X-Men 97, my average episode score and my score for the series were 2 different numbers. And my series score was actually a little bit higher. This time around, however, my scores are significantly lower, as you might imagine. With all the flaws in this show, with all the character issues, story issues, annoying uses of bad songs, terrible fight scenes, boring visuals mixed with an odd assortment of occasionally interesting visuals, and of course, the greatest defender, it wasn't fun to watch. My final verdict for season 1 of Daredevil Born Again is 1 out of 5. I will give it some points for the occasional character moments and the occasional audio moments. But overall, this is a terrible show. And as you may have noticed, with a few exceptions, my scores per episode always declined on this series. And when you put it all together in my head, it's just not enjoyable. It's not well done. It is kind of offensive to me. And yeah, that might be harsh, but I feel harshness needs to be said. As a person with a disability who looks forward to things like Daredevil or other positive portrayals of the disabled, not in a pandering sort of way, but because it fits the character having that issue and being able to do stuff. It's nice having things like that every once in a while. Just wish we got them more often, and I wish they were handled by people who understand that those of us with disabilities want to be seen, we want to be heard, we just don't want to be pandered to, or have someone work on these projects that doesn't view them as something serious or as something worth treating with respect. If this was a Netflix season, I'd give it a 0.5 out of 5 because I like the cast. And that's it. If this was the 4th season of the Netflix show, it would be an insult to everyone who loves Daredevil. In fact, it doesn't need to be a season of the Netflix show to be an insult. It straight up is. This show was terrible. It was boring, and it was insulting. All I want to know from you, audience, is did you hate it as much as me? Or did you even waste your time with this show? Personally, I hope you never wasted your time with this show, because it's not worth it. Despite all the pain and irritation this show caused me, I will say this. I am grateful you joined me for this journey. I'm just glad you're watching, and I'm just glad to have your support. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if I'm going to review any more Marvel stuff, except for X-Men 97 Season 2. Probably going to review that. That'll hopefully be good. Maybe. Please. But until next time, thank you for watching. Check out my other videos, and I'll see you at the tavern.